Thank you for joining us. Trust that you all are well. John, Esther, and Vanessa, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're going to give folks maybe like a minute or so just to come on in. You all are the early birds. And yep, so here's some more people coming in now. We want to be respectful of your time, but thank you for joining us, and we'll be started momentarily. Joining us today for a conversation with none other than Marvell Terry, the second who is joining us today all the way from Germany. We are honored that he has carved out time in his schedule to be present with us and to have a very candid conversation around barriers that impact persons living with HIV and all of those things. So if you would make sure that you're muted. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to Marvell so that he can begin and start us, and then we'll close out and wrap up at the end and share some next steps for you guys, and we'll go from there. Marvell, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome, awesome. First, good afternoon. Can you see my screen? Yes, okay. Like Dr. Tasha said, I bring you greetings from Munich, Germany. I'm currently at the International AIDS Conference. It is 8 p.m. over here, so I won't keep you all long. But I'll make sure that we do what we need to do on this particular call. Um, the purpose of this conversation, this is series three in a four-part series of conversations around HIV. And so what I'm excited to talk about is HIV being a social justice issue. The title of my presentation is Bar Before the Bar, Conversational Barriers. Um, a couple conflict of interest or a little bit about myself. My work started in Memphis, Tennessee. I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia. Probably about 10 to 15 years of work in both local, regional, and national work, and now doing global work with my role at Funders Concerned About AIDS. I've started an HIV ministry in Memphis, so that gives some further context into the work that you all are doing around faith communities, and also a person living with HIV. My disclosure is I'm advisory board member for Wake Forest, and my comments offered today are not part of the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS, which I am a part of. I would love for you all to put in the chat where you're calling from, or well, not calling from, where you're tuning in from. I would love to see where you all are from. So please share your name, your organization, and your pronouns in the chat. We will be doing some group work today. So I'm excited to be able to break you all off into groups. And so I definitely want to get started in our presentation. Before I get started, I would love to hear who is familiar with the HIV continuum of care. Who is familiar with the HIV continuum of care? Esther, I see your hand up. I mean, your thumb up. Anyone else familiar with the HIV continuum of care?
We are at Triad Health Project.
Come on, thank you for that. Anyone else have a concept or a framework of what the HIV continuum of care is?
Hi, this is Emilio. I have some ideas what continuum of care is.
Okay. Anyone like to speak on it? I'm seeing a couple hands, a couple thumbs up. Can someone speak on what the HIV continuum of care is?
I guess in a nutshell, it's a bit of the best practices that guide how we holistically want to make sure that people who are living with HIV get the best care once they are aware of their diagnosis and are both seen and treated as whole people, but also with the intention of making sure that their viral load is decreased. And I think in the past several years, there's been more attention paid to also stigma alongside with the continuum of care.
Awesome, awesome. I appreciate that. Valeria, I see, Miss Valeria, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was struggling. You know, it's been a day, and look, you see it's dark, which I don't even know what's happening with my light. Anyway, hello everyone. I was gonna say, just to follow up what Adriana said, it's also with the ability to keep that person in care. And once they're admitted into care, to do the things that are needed to make sure that they remain in care.
Awesome, awesome. So did anybody else want to give some insight on what they believe the HIV continuum of care is? Okay. Not hearing anything else. I think the two responses captured what was created probably about 5, 6 years ago about this continuum of care. So it talks about a person being diagnosed. So it really starts from left to right, and so there's this cycle that a person goes through once you diagnose them. And so once you diagnose them, the next step is link them into care. They receive HIV medical care, and they're retained into care, and then they achieve viral suppression. That is the idea. And what this framework does not do is make space for any obstacles or any barriers. And so for today's work, we're going to divide you into groups, 3 groups. So Marcus, if we can kind of randomly select people to go into 3 groups, but there's something that I want you to do. So please capture this image, or you can Google it on your phone. It's called the HIV Continuum of Care. So I want to give you a little time to do that. But there's another slide where there's some instructions. So what I want you to do in your group is identify what obstacles could hinder the successful implementation of this plan. And so when I say this plan, I'm talking about the HIV continuum of care. And how would you remove those obstacles? I'm giving each group 10 minutes to kind of discuss these 2 questions. What obstacles could hinder the successful implementation of this plan? And the second question is, how would you remove these obstacles? And so I will visit each group, and I hope that you all will engage. And also, please appoint a person to report back. Again, we're going to reference this HIV continuum of care. What obstacles hinder the successful implementation of this plan? And then the second question is, how would you remove those obstacles? And so they could be actual things that your programs are doing, or hypothetical things that you think could help remove some of these barriers that you will identify in the first question. And so we will be, I was going to say it's 8:09, but it is, in some of you all areas, it is 2:09, and so we'll come back at 3:09. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. It was exciting to hear some of the conversation that many of you all were having in your groups. There were 5 groups, and so I would love to hear back from 5 different people. And so the first group is group 1. If someone could share with me what obstacles did you identify that will hinder the implementation of that, and how would you remove those obstacles? So group 1.
I'll go ahead. I wrote a couple of things down, so I'll jump in. And we were able to have a really good conversation about a multi-level approach. And one of the things is educating the providers and having the providers to have those conversations with their patients, as well as some sort of reminder system for things that, you need to have this test every 3 years. So just make sure it's in the chart so that test is being held, because a lot of times people get busy and don't remember that they have to do it anyway. Lack of trust with providers. And then the biggest thing that Renessa was talking about was removing the personal barriers. We all work hard, do all the things, try to be Superman and Superwoman. And a lot of times your basic needs aren't being met. You don't have, your car needs to be repaired, or you aren't able to take care of your kids, or the housing is ridiculous right now. And so because of that, that's causing a problem. So when those basic needs aren't being met, they become a personal barrier. So that's also an obstacle that can hinder the case manager or the professionals that are trying to make sure that they're doing the continuum of care. Better reporting. We talked about Black women and Black women not being a priority initially, and still just really having conversation about how Black women are being included. And then number 2, it just kind of goes back to funding. So, and those agencies being able to have what they need to assist. So again, it goes back to advocacy and making sure that the people that are writing these bills and policies and budgets are making sure that they're including what they need, which goes back ultimately to voting.
Awesome. Thank you. Did anyone else from group 1 have anything additional to add that was not captured? Not seeing any hands. Thank you so much for that. Group 2. Group 2.
I don't remember what group I'm in. This is Jose Rodriguez. Was that our group?
I cannot remember. We did not write it down. But if you believe you were in group 2, you were in group 2. So go ahead.
We were group 5, so I'll be quiet.
Group 5. Okay. Anyone in group 2?
Group 2 is not. So no, we would need to go to room number 3. So group 3.
Okay. Group 3.
I am in the same boat as Jose. I don't recall my group number, but I'll just jump in.
That's you, Don. Yeah, you're good.
Oh, perfect. Look at that. Okay. Spirit led. I was in a group with 2 incredible individuals who are doing work within partnership, either with faith communities or in faith communities themselves. And so the 3 barriers that we named was 1, lack of access to education around HIV, lack of access to affirming care, especially for LGBTQ plus folk, but also gender affirming care. And that's both for cis women as well as trans women. And the stigma, the fear of the unknown. This is especially the case for faith leaders and those who are sort of in positions of power or authority to be able to collaborate and move the needle on the HIV epidemic. And so one of the things that was clear as a barrier for all of us was the sort of, in many ways, Black church as an entity, as an organization, and the ways in which the stigma that we're combating, the lack of information that we are combating, and lack of access to affirming care is often a byproduct of the sort of non-affirming theologies that exist within these communities, and the sort of, in many ways, ostracization and otherization of folk living with HIV, especially as it has been primarily framed in the popular consciousness as an issue that only affects LGBTQ plus people, or only affects people who are sexually promiscuous. These sort of narratives really cause stigma and prevent folk from being able to access care.
Cool. Reverend Dunn, how would your group propose to kind of tackle some of that?
So one of the ways that the group is tackling it, particularly Crystalline, with the She Looks Like Me project, which is in collaboration with the St. Paul AME Church, which I just learned is the home church of Rosa Parks, is tackling it by providing gender responsive and affirming care, particularly for Black women, wherein she names that it's not really a focus on one's orientation to faith or even subscribing to sort of particular theologies. They have a neutral lens. That's the language that Crystalline used when they provide care for folks. And so they aren't allowing theology or sort of faith to prevent them from being able to reach out, provide care, or inform the way that they care for other people, which I thought was important. The other piece is, and I am trying to get my other colleague's name, that
Kimberly Williams.
Yes, Kimberly O. Williams, thank you. Kimberly O. Williams named that she is specifically working with faith leaders, providing them with education, demystifying the conversation around HIV, and providing them with safe spaces to be able to enter into the conversation so that the fear they have around the unknown or their lack of knowledge or information does not prevent them from engaging in combating the epidemic.
Awesome. Thank you, Reverend. Anyone else from group 3 that would like to provide any commentary that they don't believe that was captured, or add any other comments? Not seeing any hands. Thank you so much. Group 4.
This is the group with Adriana, Esther, Ty, and Jamie.
I'm reporting out, but I am certainly welcoming my lovely, wonderful friends to join in if I missed something. But we had a great discussion, and it was really wonderful to hear from the others how their organizations or things that they've been doing for years have been coming at this continuum of care. But some obstacles that we identified off the top: equity in the forms of racism, sexism, homophobia, socioeconomic issues, and just thinking about how when we are all the training that needs to happen from the jump, whether it's the doctors, providers, in our own organizations, really thinking about different lenses that need to be looked at when we are working with folks. So that was one. Ty identified the mental health and how really people are coming at this with trauma. Maybe they come with trauma already, but then also just even at the event of diagnosis, and how it can be very helpful to have peer support as a part of the path in which we are working with people. And then to strong partnerships with mental health organizations, behavioral health organizations, in order to combat this barrier. And then in our own organizations, one thing that I was talking about was the idea that really just even the name continuum of care implies that this would be a pathway that you travel and then you like finish. Okay, I got there. And I think that if that gives the idea that if you don't, that it can be very defeating. And then it also implies too for our own organizations that perhaps we're doing something wrong or we should be doing something different. And I know one thing that we've tried to do is take a look at how we can be the most liberated gatekeepers as possible in our own organizations, because we are gatekeepers in our nonprofit, but we need to continually provide avenues, pathways back in as simply as possible for people to get back into our care, and make sure that they have that pathway and that is talked about, that you might have a moment where you want to go away and that's okay, because this is a pathway, and that's just a people thing. It's not just an HIV experience, it's a people thing. We all have pathways that we go on. And then Ms. Esther was talking about religion being a barrier, religious trauma being a barrier, and so all the work that she's been doing for years, doing training with folks in the community to address their biases, and how that can be such an important part of this work in bringing people together and making sure that people can continue the parts of their lives that are really important to what's affirming for them, and still be a person who's living with HIV on this path, finding that pathway back. So those are some things we discussed.
Awesome. Anybody else from that group would like to provide any commentary that they did not hear? I love that. Thank you for doing that interrogation, and thank you for
I did want to
acknowledging.
add something, Marvell. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Adriana did an awesome awesome job representing our group. But one of the other things is in the HIV care continuum needs to be a sustainability plan. And there is none. It's like you arrive and done. But what are we looking at over time to support individuals in this care continuum? It's almost like what Andrea mentioned, like no one arrives at a specific path and go through these steps succinctly. It's going to be this, that, they may go back. But then what are we putting in place to address that, and help people for themselves devise a sustainable plan? So I just wanted to include that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Miss Esther. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah, what I appreciate about that is that this is not linear. And so as a person living with HIV myself, is that I've dropped out of care more times than I'd like to admit. And you have to restart that process all the way back over. And the reasons vary each single time. And so what I appreciate about your commentary is that it does give us some insight that while this is one of the many frameworks that we can use, it is not the only framework that we can use, and that every single person's journey is very different, and it is unique to who they are and their life experience. So I appreciate your group for doing that work. Thank you so much. Anyone else from that group would like to provide any commentary? Not hearing any. Let's go to the next. Is it Jamie?
Yes, thank you. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Max. Well, the point is something that I just heard, that is the trauma, like going again for the trauma. And I heard that, and I was searching a little bit of that, and of course, the people with HIV and that have the trauma, they are more likely to have that again. So it's something that we should take care of also.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Trauma is real, and so thank you for acknowledging that.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else from that group? If not, can we move on to the next group? I think, Marcus, is this next group 5?
Yes, next is group 5, Antoine, Brian Marshall, Jose Rodriguez, and Yolanda.
Awesome. Come on, group 5.
I'll go ahead and speak. This is Jose Rodriguez, and let me look at the notes that we actually kept notes. Generally speaking, blocks to care are lack of awareness and education, particularly misinformation, education gaps. We're also seeing geographical barriers and healthcare infrastructure. We delved deep into geographical barriers with some of our partners being in more rural areas and some of us being in more urban areas. So for our more rural partners, it was, accessibility, being able to get to a place with testing, for example. And in my setting, in the Latino community, our geographical barriers is that many of the people that we want to get tested, we want them to get tested, we want them to know their status, are really off-put by the centralized location where everyone could see them walk through a door, or in at least in my context, a lot of the testing events have the testing is happening there. So someone who is hesitant about getting testing isn't going to go to a place where people could see them get testing. That is a geographical consideration. One, being visible, and then two, also providing discretion for those that wish for discretion. And time and availability, for one group, testing is made available at clubs and in places where high traffic. In another group, individuals work 2 or 3 jobs because they're immigrants or refugees, and we're not really offering testing opportunities at atypical times, or the wait for testing is very long, and a person who maybe has 30 minutes or an hour to squeeze in for testing can't sit down at a center, wait an hour or two for the name to be called. There's a lot of considerations that are pretty much driven by someone's context and the culture and the people they serve.
Yes, thank you, Jose, and thank you for your group for bringing in some of those structural barriers that oftentimes our centers have. Banking hours is what we call them, and that's normally 8 to 5 or 9 to 4. And so I appreciate your group acknowledging kind of some of those structural barriers that might prevent people from getting tested. Anyone else from your group want to add any commentary?
Yeah, Marvell, I'll add some more. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Marshall with Mashup, based in Nashville, Tennessee. Two of the things that I did mention to add to our group was, and I'm more so speaking on the perspective of Nashville, is that Nashville I consider to be like a transplant city. So we have a lot of people who come in and out, and so they might have gotten tested here, gotten the care here, but then moved, and now we don't know where they have been relocated to. And so we may be, our numbers may be skewed because we don't have people who are consistently in our city to, continually stay in that care, and not really any efforts on trying to follow up, or, may not know how to contact them or lost contact. But then also we have people who have still been here, but due to gentrification have been displaced. And so we don't know, where are they living now? What zip code are they in? We have seen some recent data or some concentrated new cases of HIV in certain parts of our city, but definitely, needed just a better job also in doing an updated needs assessment to also understanding what are the updated needs of those in our city. But of course, again, with it being a transplant city, sometimes that's kind of skewed as well. So
thank you, Dr. Brian, for that commentary. I appreciate that. Anyone else from that group would like to add anything? All right, moving on to our final group, Group 6.
Yes, this group is with Emilio, Jerry, and John Settles.
Right. So I was voluntold to represent our group. But if I missed anything, please, my group members, please feel free to jump in. One of the great things about going last is that you guys have already been so thorough and really discussed most of the things that we talked about in our group. But we talked a lot about stigma, the access to care. One of the things that I didn't really hear that we mentioned is that there are some providers, especially in places that may not have access to specialized providers who specialize in HIV care, people who have to go to general practitioners. There may be an unwillingness from those practitioners to treat patients with HIV or to test with HIV because of stigma. So, one of the things with that, we talked about training and, just changing the perception of HIV care, so that it's something that is more of a generalized thing, and is meant for all people instead of just for gay men.
Thank you. Anyone else from Group 6 that would like to add to that?
Yes, Emilio. So one thing, thank you, Jerry, for share what we discussed. And one thing that also we mentioned was in the step of diagnosis of HIV, criminalization is a barrier also, criminalization of HIV, because there are people, personally I hear, that they say, oh, I prefer not take the test, it's better to know, because there are laws that can, I get in trouble for that. So I prefer not to that, to get a diagnosis. So that is a barrier that, and we didn't go deeper in that, but I just want to share there are an organization nationwide. The name is Zero Project, and they are doing marvelous work across the country, helping the community to do advocacy, work with the lawmaker to see how they can modernize the HIV law.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Anyone else would like to add to it? Not hearing anyone else. First, give yourselves, I'm a church boy, give yourselves a hand clap. I appreciate the effort that all of you all have done in identifying some barriers. You all have already done the presentation, the rest of my presentation. For that, I wanted to say thank you for that. One thing I wanted to identify, I was very specific about the time that I had you all in your groups, because every 9.5 minutes, someone is diagnosed with HIV. And so the time that we took to get in our groups, someone else in the United States was diagnosed with HIV. I want to provide for you, one of the last things that I want to provide for you is actually the work that you all just did, but naming that framework. And that framework is called the bar before the bar. And so, yes, we talk about the HIV continuum of care, which are the blue bars, but there's this red bar that NASDAD created a couple years ago. Sorry, I didn't cite my source, but this is a graphic from NASDAD, NASTAD, and they identify some of the barriers that people encounter even before they get tested and are diagnosed with HIV or have to repeat that process over. You all identify those things: racism, poverty, homophobia, shame, violence, classism, homelessness. I want you to keep those things in mind when you create your programs. Is your program on a bus line? Is your program accessible to the public? If your city does not have adequate transportation, are you providing Uber and Lyft vouchers so that people can get where they need to get to? One thing I did not hear is language justice. What I acknowledge and recognize on this call is that English is not everyone's primary language or first language. And so when we think about our programs, we have to also think about that multiple communities can engage in our services if we just translate our programs for them. And so that's from brochures, that is to our programming. And so just think more broadly when we think about what barriers are people facing before they access services at our institutions or our clinics or our faith settings or our ministries. Also be mindful of language. I sat in on one group and someone said homosexuals. And just be mindful of how we say what we say and where we say what we say, and how that term can be offensive to someone that might be gay, and it's okay to say gay in the church. If you are here in this space, it is my belief that if you are here, then you are trying to push and knock down barriers. And so I hope that you can go back to your faith setting and actually say gay and not and call someone a homosexual. And so also thinking about language as well. Um, these are some things that I wanted to pull out. Stigma, we talked about that, criminalization, homelessness, racism, poverty. One thing about criminalization that I want to talk about is that I believe that in all southern states that you all are in, HIV is criminalized. And so if I know that HIV is criminalized, what is the likelihood of me getting a test? Or what is the likelihood of me wanting my HIV status to be documented? What we're working right now on the Presidential Advisory Council is this data protection for the federal government, because what certain police jurisdictions have been doing is going to the doctor's offices to get the health information of individuals to criminalize them. And so if I know that you're able to go get my health information, I am often unlikely to get tested for HIV. And so there is this multi-pronged approach that we must engage in when we think about HIV, when we think about linking into care, and when we think about one successfully engaging into care. Also, let's think about the words that we use. Adherence and retention are militarized words. And so, what other words could we use in our work than Black folks being adherent to a thing, or brown folks being retained into things that are often used in our community as it relates to a prison system? And so, so we have to do this work of decolonizing our programs, decolonizing the way that we speak about our programs. And so I wanted to pause that right there and see if did anyone else have any commentary or any thoughts.
Hey Marvell, thank
Yes.
you. That's really rich. So I don't have any comments necessarily, but just a question. Is there a place, a website, something when we speak about language justice, and we know that, the language is always evolving? Is there a place where we can go and find out more information about different language or the use of terminology like adherence? And because I've worked at a place where adherence was used pretty heavily, but yeah, is there a website or something that people can review to kind of stay updated on some of this language and just learn more about language justice in general?
Yeah, I off the back of my head, there's not one landing page that I can refer you to, or one website, because like you said, it is always evolving, and not to trigger anyone, but we're in the age, instead of saying suicide, we say unalive or unalive. And so instead of saying homelessness, we now say unhoused, and so language is always evolving. I will try to do some research after this call to see if there's a particular page. I would love to send people to Pause Magazine is a great source around language. The Iris Project out of New York does great work around trying to update people on language. But I can try to do some homework after this and hope to attach to this presentation so this group can have it. But that's a good point. But that's also a further grant opportunity for someone on this call, to create this language guide, or how do we decolonize language in HIV spaces and movement spaces? I think could be some work that someone on this call can actually do. I saw Father Jose and then Adriana. So I see your hand up, Father Jose.
I wanted to thank you for talking about the language adjustment. And I actually like that choice of words, because that goes beyond just translating. Not everything translates one for one. You have to adjust it and put it in another language. And I want to counter that by saying that when we do our documents, our resources, we use meaningful symbols. And not only do we have to adjust the language, but we also have to adjust the symbols and images that we use, because the reason we use symbols is to attract and bring people in and disarm them and make them receptive to the message. And we also have to understand that symbols, colors, images also need to be adjusted when we adjust language.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Also system impacted is another kind of, instead of saying incarcerated, saying system impacted. So just thinking of things that, as words are evolving. Adriana?
So I also wanted to mention, just saying a thank you for the language justice piece, but wanted to bring forward that idea of the translation, and that a part of that justice is making sure that we don't advertise services that we don't offer. And so sometimes organizations will translate materials and they'll bring people in, but then they don't have anyone within their offices who can actually converse and speak with and provide services to people who speak those languages. And so I think this also brings forward the point that is so, like, we can continue building these websites and continue building pieces where we translate or we bring forward the right words. But central to all of this is making sure that we have the people who we're trying to service in our organizations at the forefront of the work. So how would you like to be referred to? What do you want to say about this? And that being the conversation even more so, and how do you inform the work? And then if you're working here, or you're not just working here, running the thing, running the dang thing, then we can actually make sure that we are I think informing these things and building the vernacular in the best way. And that goes for different languages, and then in English, the right words as well, since it's so evolving.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Esther?
Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation as well. In working in different capacities where language has become an issue, and it can be up to it can change, especially when we're talking about foreign language, or Spanish, even different Spanish languages is not the same across the board. So I really like the point that you talked about research. There's several toolkits that are out. UNC has a toolkit. I believe Wake Forest. I think the Faith Coordinating Center has some language around a toolkit for language. But we are currently working with different federal governments, different nonprofits, to make up a toolkit just to help individuals with language, because we are still using aids. We're still using outdated language that can be very stigmatizing. And I like the point that was just referenced, that you get more information when you ask that individual, how would you like to be referred to as? Don't assume, but just ask if you don't know. I think that's very transparent and you get a lot of information. But just having something, a document, that for reference for providers, for community leaders, for people to use, especially we're trying to work with our spiritual leaders to get them a toolkit, because they don't know, they continue to use language that they've been hearing over the years. So definitely do the research, but I can send you, Marvell, a couple of different resources, because I don't use one. I think when you go and look at different ones, you can kind of develop your own toolkit so that you can pass out for yourself in the community.
Awesome, awesome. Esther, if you could send that to Marcus and he'll compile everything and send it back out to people. I know that we only have about 2 more minutes. One thing I want to do is there's some key takeaways to there are structural, social, and political reasons why people do not get tested, and that testing should be accessible to all communities, and that's something that we have identified. Lastly, I formally want to invite you to Black in the South Summit, which is a convening I'm hosting as a pre-conference to the United States Conference on AIDS. I believe that all Black folks should get in a room to strategize about HIV in an election year. And so that's Black trans folks, that's Black gay folks, that's Black women, that's Black straight men, that's Black folks. And so I would like to formally invite you to that, and we'll have an after party that is free. But there is one thing that I particularly want to do, because I am who I am, is recognize and talk about it is important that we all vote. And I know that you all 501c3 organizations, and so you cannot tell people who to vote for, but you can do advocacy work. HIV is on the line. HIV funding is on the line right now. Criminalization is on the line right now. PEPFAR is on the line right now. So the global community is looking at the United States, and they really need us to show up. And the last thing that I wanted to say is, as we are activists and people who act, it is important to remember Sonia Macy, who is a Black woman in Illinois who was shot by the police in her kitchen, in her face. And so HIV is still a social justice issue that intersects with so many other issues in our community. And we don't have the privilege of just addressing HIV in our communities, that there are many things that we have to address. I thank you for the work that you all are doing in your communities. I'm excited to see new organizations getting funded on this call, particularly Mashup and Pride in the Pews. I'm excited to see you all here. And there are many other organizations that I don't know the names here, but I am excited to host this session, but more excited to see more people joining in this work. And we have to address it from an intersectional way. Thank you so much, Wake Forest.
All right, thank you. Can we give Marvell a virtual round of applause? Yay, Marvell, thank you for.
I'm gonna give Marvell a hands up, 2 snaps, and all around. Marvell.
Yes, Marvell, thank you for your dynamic presentation. I want to share an opportunity with you all, just as a commercial, that we will have our last iteration of our Summer Learning Collaborative on August the 28th, again at 2 p.m., where Dr. Ulysses Burley will be joining us, and he's going to present on understanding syndemics, the language, and the national HIV/AIDS strategy. You all are already included on our listserv, so you are invited. We want to encourage you, if you're able to bring a friend, so that you can join us for that last learning collaborative for the summer. And we hope to be able to offer more iterations of these learning collaboratives in the fall and hopefully in the spring. Without further ado, we want to be again respectful of your time. Thank you for carving out time in your schedule to be present with us and actively engaging in this conversation. We so greatly appreciate it. We hope that it has enhanced your understanding of this particular topic, and we hope that you will again bring a friend. Join us on August the 28th for our last summer collaborative for this summer session. And so if there aren't any further questions, you are released, and thank you for joining. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Can you put Marvell's flyer in the chat, or will you send it out?
We're going to follow up with some, thank you, Esther. We're going to follow up with an email. It'll come with some other resources. Once I get his final list of resources, it'll come to you via email.
Okay. All right. Y'all have a great rest of your day on purpose.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I also had a quick question. Very quick question. So, does Wake Forest have